It is not our intention with this video to condone the keeping of venomous snakes and lizards in domestic situations, but it is reality that in the United Kingdom individuals do keep venomous snakes with or without a dangerous wild animals licence. It is our aim through this video in educating the public of the health and welfare issues that surround the keeping of venomous snakes, and hopefully to encourage people to understand that it's absolutely essential that people must only keep these animals with a dangerous wild animals licence. There can be no excuses for the illegal keeping or smuggling of any reptile species in the modern day.
Whether or not you agree or disagree with the keeping of venomous reptiles in captivity in the United Kingdom, it is essential that people understand the captive husbandry and the health and safety implications surrounding these creatures, which are often misunderstood. This video is aimed at the professional herpetologist, as well as local government agencies, animal welfare officers, and people who would be responsible for the enforcement of legislation relating to the keeping of venomous snakes and venomous lizards. The Dangerous Wild Animals Act of 1976 was brought into force in order to prevent people from keeping panthers, tigers, pumas and leopards in their garden sheds. It also lists all the species of reptiles which need to be licensed before the individual considers keeping them under the Dangerous Wild Animals list. Before you consider keeping a venomous reptile, it is our recommendation that you contact the local environmental health officer who will be based at your local council. It is important to arrange a discussion with those and a meeting prior to your application being submitted for the intended species. The Dangerous Wild Animals Licence is realistically a set of health and safety guidelines ranging from a fire certificate, correct fire extinguishers fitted to the particular building where the snakes are intended to be kept, smoke alarms, and the correct handling equipment and correct insurance policies that will be needed in the eventuality of an accident occurring.
It is important that you realise some of the qualities the EHOs are looking for. Firstly, responsibility. They are looking for a sense that you take seriously the implications of keeping a dangerous animal. Husbandry skills. It is important that you demonstrate more than the basics of snake keeping. They need to see that you have spent time in honing your herpetological skills. It is also valid that you have a good all-round snake knowledge and that you have spent time in learning about these animals. Your setup and procedures should demonstrate forethought in dealing with venomous snakes. Whether it be snakebite procedures or maintenance protocols, they all need thinking about in advance. Your attitude is also important. It is necessary to maintain sensible attitudes with this dangerous hobby. For instance, letting a Crotalus atrox on the floor to show your new girlfriend is not an example of behaving sensibly with these creatures. And finally, the ability to work with the authorities. This is absolutely essential to maintaining your licence with your local council. The health and safety standards you maintain are instrumental in an accident being far less likely. This starts with your snake room design. We would always recommend a separate room which is dedicated for venomous snakes and not used for anything else. We have constructed a snake room here. Yours might be the same or different. Generally, as a DWA is administered in different ways in different areas, so they might insist on all these things or other things that they feel is appropriate. As you approach your snake room, there should be clear notices and warnings of venomous snakes. The door should be locked and a key held in a secure place so that only authorised people can enter this room. It might be an idea to give a spare key to your backup people in case of emergency. In a number of areas, an inner or second door is required. The inner door. This should have either glass panels or be of a stable door system. This allows the safe viewing of the inside of the snake room in case of escape. The area between these doors is an excellent place for warnings such as emergency telephone numbers. There should be again more warnings of venomous snakes, and also a snake bite protocol which gives people clear instructions on what to do in the event of a snake bite. It also might be a good idea to have a piece of handling equipment in case of escape. This would allow you to be ready for capture of the escapee without having to go into the room with it possibly being around your feet. Your snake room should have yet more notices and warnings. We have listed for you later on some of the various notices which you might find useful. It is also a good idea to have fire extinguishers and smoke alarms. CCTV is also a helpful aid. This is not expensive and can be purchased from most DIY shops. In some areas, this is a requirement, not an optional extra. We cannot emphasize forethought and caution enough. Everything should be thought out ahead of any arrivals. It is very important that there should be no clutter. The last thing you want when handling a venomous snake is to trip over something on the floor. Also, if you do have an escapee, you do not want to have to go searching through lots of clutter to find it. This increases the chance of being bitten greatly. Your handling equipment should also be to hand. The cages should be clearly numbered and locked. A good idea is a key locker where all the keys for the vivs are kept. Again, should be clearly labelled and kept locked. Notices clearly displayed are very important. Here we have listed below some examples for you. The first obvious one is a clear warning that there are venomous snakes held in these cages. The second is emergency telephone numbers of your backup people. The poisons unit, such as Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, who are experts in antivenin and snakebite treatment, and then the telephone number of the local A&E department. An extra one that would be useful is a local police station number. Third would be a snakebite protocol, which would have clear instructions on what to do in case of snakebite. It is also a good idea to take this with you to the hospital. Fourth, it is important that any emergency services, if called for, can tell exactly what was kept in the snake room. So a species list and numbers kept is also important. Make sure you list the Latin names, as people often call snakes with different common names. Handling procedures are best written down, as it will aid the thinking process of what you are about to do. When a procedure is written down, it encourages you to keep to this and not take shortcuts.
In the event of a bite from a venomous snake, there is the potential for a person to go into anaphylactic shock. Unfortunately, none of us know, or in very few cases, whether or not we are going to go into shock until we've been bitten, by which time it is often too late. Therefore, any of the serious venomous snake keepers often will keep with them an EpiPen injector. This is a 1 in 1,000 adrenaline injection, which is simply thrust into the outer thigh if somebody does start to go into anaphylactic shock. It administers 0.3 mils of adrenaline, and that in itself counteracts in most cases anaphylaxis and can save your life.
The vivariums which you keep your venomous snakes in should be well thought through. Also, it may be noted that some authorities have been known to specify which type of viv you should be using. We would recommend a moulded viv, as they are often much sturdier. They are completely sealed and don't have many of the problems of other types of vivs made out of wood. Vivarium, then the construction of it should be strong. Do not use thin pieces of board for the back, but use the same type of wood as the sides and top. Always use safety glass, which is much harder to break. It is imperative that the cage be sealed for obvious reasons. Try to avoid lips or recesses, as snakes can hide in these and it can be difficult to get the snake out of. This goes for heating and lighting as well. You do not want lots of wires and holes. in which a venomous snake can get caught up in, as you do not want to be trying to free your snake, as the chance of being bitten increases greatly. We have not gone into various heating and lighting methods, as it is expected that you should have a great deal of experience with this in regard to non-venomous snakes. If you haven't, you should not be even thinking of getting a venomous snake. The cage should have a cage lock on and 2 labels. The first label should be a warning stating that this cage holds venomous snakes. The second label should contain the following information: cage number, species contained, common names and Latin names, how many snakes are in this cage, and the poisons unit emergency telephone numbers. It is a good idea if you can detach this from the cage easily, so if a bite occurs you can take it to the A&E department with you. One idea which is good is to put the water bowl next to the doors at the front, so you do not have to reach in past the snake to fill this up. All matters concerning the cage should be again thought through in advance. This is why it's especially important that you spend time with other venomous keepers and gain ideas which will help you with your snake. Most keepers are happy to help you gain knowledge from their experience. This will help you design safe cages which are easy to maintain. Depending on the species kept, a hide box can aid the maintenance of a venomous snake cage. The snake can be encouraged to go into the box, then a door is then pulled across to seal the snake in. The following clip shows how this should work. Be advised this does not work for some snakes and cannot be used in every case. The cage is then safe to be cleaned. We have a section on maintenance later in this video. What you need to know about venom. Firstly, venom is not a substance designed to kill you. It is designed to kill the prey of the venomous snake as quickly and as efficiently as it can. It is important you realise that there are several things which make up how dangerous a particular venomous snake is. We have categorised them in the following ways. Potency of venom. Effectiveness of the envenomating system, i.e. the fangs, and the willingness to bite or aggressive nature of the particular species. It is reasonably easy to scale on the first 2, but the third one is often very much subject to opinion, and the experience the handler has had with a given species. We have given you some guidelines, but you must treat every specimen individually, and you should always have caution, caution and more caution. Never assume a snake is going to act in the same way as it always has. With the right safety precautions, you should be in a position, if the snake does act in a completely different way, to be able to handle this. The envenomation system and types of venoms also varies with different types of venomous snakes. Before we go into that, it is important you understand the mechanics of what happens when a bite occurs. Here we see how a pair of fangs work. The fangs are hollow, and when so required, the venom is shot from the venom gland along a tube and through the hollow fangs into the flesh, just like 2 hypodermic needles. We are now going to look at the different types of fangs in commonly kept venomous snakes. The first one we will examine are the front fixed fangs. These snakes are normally found in the elapid group. The fangs are situated at the front of the mouth and are always ready for deployment. Due to this fact, the fangs are normally smaller than the other front fang snakes, but do not be complacent, as this group comprises of some of the most dangerous snakes in the world. The second is a front hinge fang, and are found in the Vipidae group. They have fangs which are hinged and come into play when needed. These snakes tend to have larger fangs. The gaboon viper is an example of this, and its fangs have been found up to 2 inches long. The third group is the rear, fanged group. Fangs in this group are situated in the upper rear of the mouth. The downside of this system is that they generally have to chew the venom into the bite wound. But don't think this makes them less dangerous. Remember, the boom slang is in this group and has a highly toxic venom. For all these groups, we have used the same computer-generated model of a snake to demonstrate the different positions in the fangs. But obviously, different species of snakes have different positions of fangs, and it is important that you know the differences. One final group we will look at are the spitters. They have a unique technique of spitting their venom up to 10 feet. They also have an uncanny knack and good aim of going for the eyes. Safety goggles are always needed when handling these snakes, but remember, they can bite too. We are now going to look at some of the facts about venom and snakebite effects. It is important and part of your responsibility as a venomous snake keeper to have researched this subject and have a grasp of it. Snake venom is a complex mixture. It is a subject in which you can go into it in some considerable depth. For the purposes of this video, we will only cover it on a surface level. There are 3 basic types of venom. The first one is neurotoxic venom. This venom is found in a lot of elapids, such as cobras and mambas. Its primary purpose is to attack the nervous system. Neurotoxins can also cause pain and paralysis. People and prey bitten by a venomous snake that has neurotoxins can die of heart failure or suffocation. The second type of venom is hemotoxic venom. This attacks the circulatory system and body tissues. The result of this means pain, swelling, and thinning or thickening of the victim's blood, and reduced or ceased functioning of the affected internal organs. The final group is cytotoxic venom. This venom attacks the cellular structure around the bite site. With this type of venom, you can see large gaping holes from cellular breakdown. A lot of venoms contain a mixture of all these components. For instance, you might see necrosis from a snake which mainly is neurotoxic. It is important for these reasons you know the species you are working with. Here we have listed some species of venomous snakes and their venom properties. Remember, do not assume that because a particular species is in one group that it does not have properties that affect the others. One of the things you must think about, if bitten, is the amount of venom which is lethal to a human being. There is no hard and fast rule with this, as it all depends on how the bite happens. These figures are only a guideline, as many factors come into play with them. For instance, where does the bite occur on the body? Have both fangs penetrated the skin? and how much venom is pumped into the bite site. It is, however, no matter how much latitude you give them, a very sobering thought. These figures, at the very least, should encourage you to be vigilant and always take seriously the caution that you should always have. Always remember, no shortcut is worth your life. Antivenom and how it is produced. First, the venom is extracted from a live snake, as you can see here. This is called milking. Generally, someone will lift out the snake from the viv onto a surface where they have room to work. Normally, and this varies with the handler, the snake is then pinned gently, making sure you are not damaging the snake. You then either use the 2 or 3 fingered hold depending on the species, and lift the head while supporting the body. A large venomous snake might need a second person to restrain the body, as most snakes do not like being pinned, and you will see a different side to them completely. Violent struggles and sharp movements are not uncommon, and make it necessary for the handler to be sure he has a firm hold. Most venomous snakes at this point are eager to bite something. The handler then puts the snake's head over a beaker with film going across the top, which will feel like skin to the snake. Normally the snake will then happily inject copious amounts of venom. The handler will often massage the venom glands found in the upper rear of the head to extract any more venom that's there. It is then bottled and sent off to a laboratory. At the laboratory, a horse or sheep is injected with 1/10 to 1/100th the lethal dose of venom. Over a period of several weeks, the animal is injected with increasingly potent doses of venom. By the end of about 3 months, the animal is receiving doses several times stronger than a lethal dose. Meanwhile, the animal's body is producing antibodies, which are proteins made by the body to fight foreign substances, such as venom. When you are sick, you may go to the doctor to receive antibiotics. These work in the same way. Most of the time your body actually produces its own antibodies to fight off viruses. That's why most people only get chickenpox once. After the first time, antibodies that remember the virus kick in and fight the invading germs. Scientists at the laboratory withdraw blood from the animal. The blood samples are then centrifuged. This is a really cool process where the container of blood is spun round very fast. When the blood spins, the white blood cells separate from the red blood cells. The white blood cells collectively are called serum, and actually contain antibodies to the venom. The serum is then bottled up and sent off to hospitals. Bitten by the big one. Due to the serious consequences of being bitten, we have been given permission to tell the story of Brett Welsh, an experienced rattlesnake keeper who was bitten due to an error in judgment. Although some of the footage has been recreated using a double and the rattlesnake being changed for a non-venomous snake, the rest of the facts are true. This includes the pictures of the tissue damage to his hand. In February 2001, Brett and his wife took a zoology class to South Texas on a field trip. Brett's experience goes back 20 years, and so he thought there was nothing to fear. The trip was progressing well, and the group was examining alligator tracks. It was lunchtime and the sun was hot. The group was driving along a road when a large western diamondback was seen crossing the road. Brett stopped the truck and jumped out and decided to catch him for further study. As they approached the snake, it came backing up into the full S shape that they are so famous for. A common technique that Brett had used was putting a t-shirt over the snake to calm it down, so that he could then capture it. But this particular diamondback was having none of it. As it made off, Brett managed to tail the rattlesnake and started to get it under control. Then completely unexpectedly, the snake struck up at Brett's face. As Brett leaned backwards to avoid being bitten in the face, his free arm came down and the snake managed to land both fangs into the hand. Brett looked up at his wife and said, "This one is going to hurt in the morning." Both of them realised this was a serious bite, and they needed to make all haste and get Brett to the local hospital. It was 30 to 40 minutes away. As they climbed back in the truck and calmed everybody down, they headed off. Brett started to feel the effects of the venom spreading through his body. By the time they had started moving in the truck, Brett's hand was double the size. It was also bleeding profusely. The next stage of the envenomation started to kick in. A wave of nausea hit Brett, and hit him hard. As Brett was feeling sick to his stomach, he glanced into the rearview mirror and noticed his pupils were yellow. He commented on this to his wife, who informed him he was completely yellow. He was now feeling tremendous pain all through his body, and the nausea was threatening to turn into shock, and Brett felt he was going to succumb to it at any minute. The emergency staff started to work on Brett. His blood pressure was dangerously low. It was then decided to intubate. A tube was put down into Brett's airway to help him breathe. Due to the fact that doctors at this particular hospital didn't feel they could cope with the bite, and Brett's wife didn't have any confidence in them, the decision was made to move Brett to another hospital. At the second hospital, a doctor took the decision to give Brett Black Widow anti-venom. Brett spent 30 hours unconscious fighting for his life with tubes all over his body. He was again moved to a third hospital. When he awoke, he was unaware of the anxiety and chaos which had taken place. He received between 5 and 10 vials of rattlesnake anti-venom. Months after the bite, and Brett has still virtually no use of his hand, but counts his blessings after doctors had wanted to take it, but he refused. Even now, more than a year after the bite, in preparing for this video, and we have spoken to Brett, who informed us that the scarring from the tissue is still very bad, and it will take several operations with plastic surgery to fix this. He still has almost no use, but has learnt several hard lessons about his error in judgment. Brett Welsh has handled over 200 rattlesnakes, and his experience spans over 2 decades. We have included this story on this video, not to be shocking, but to show you the consequences of a bite can be devastating even with anti-venom. Many people underestimate the damage a few milligrams of venom can do. It is our hope that you learn from this account, and without constant diligence and caution, bites can occur. Never get complacent, and always expect the unexpected. If you always follow the protocols you have established, most bites can be avoided. Many bites occur in handling venomous snakes when shortcuts and overconfidence is practiced. Remember, it is better to learn from somebody else's mistakes than having to go through the pain yourself. Handling your venomous snakes. Handling venomous snakes is of course the riskiest part of keeping venomous snakes, and should only be done when necessary. However, it is part of keeping venomous snakes, and so we will cover it in this video. Although we will go through the basics, do not think you are ready to go out and handle either a very angry taipan or an 18-foot king cobra. Most handling requires a certain amount of confidence, and this only comes through experience. The best way of getting this experience is spending time with more experienced keepers, and watching and learning how they do things. We will look at the various methods, but make sure you always do everything with planning and caution. As we have seen, the consequences of being bitten are grave. The various methods we will look at are listed here: using the hook, tailing with a hook, and tubing. Here, we are going to look at using a snake hook. There are many on the market, but we would always recommend Midwest Custom products. These are strong and hard wearing. It is important you have enough snake hooks for you and your backup people. Also, that you have enough various types and sizes to cope with all the species you have. One of the criteria in selection of a hook is the length and strike length of the snake you plan to move. For instance, it is not particularly wise to move a 7-foot eastern diamondback rattlesnake with a 2-foot hook. Also bear in mind, with this example, you are looking at a snake which is quite heavy, and so a hook might not be designed for this weight, and it might snap or bend, thus producing an incident which would increase the chances of a bite. Before we look at using the hook, it is important that you know how to open a venomous snake cage door. Many accidents have occurred by people opening the door with their fingers exposed. In some instances, the snake has struck purely on a feeding response, but the result is still the same. Make sure you keep all fingers clear of the edges, so that even if the snake does strike at you, you are well out of the way. Here we see it in action. Always look and see where the snake or snakes are before opening. Keep awareness up whilst unlocking the cage, and never allow fingers on the edge whilst opening or shutting the door. Here you can see Damien lifting out a rhino viper. Notice that everything is done in a relaxed and patient way. It is important you don't rush anything and take your time doing it. Notice the way that everything is done out of the strike range. The snake is then put in a tray where the lid can lock down. If you are able to do it this way, it is an excellent method of moving a member of the Vipidae group. People use this system with the Vipidae group because generally they are slower moving and will sit on a hook. But remember, all groups have exceptions and no two snakes are the same. Always be aware and expect, for instance, a snake to suddenly make off at speed or strike up at you. Part of this awareness comes into play with the choice of hook. The next method we will look at is the hook and tail method. This is a method which requires practice and some confidence. It is also a technique which is most likely to end up in a bite. You need to have spent some time working with vipers and rattlesnakes before moving on to this system. It is mainly used amongst cobras and the arboreal fast-moving elapids. The idea is to gently hold the tail to stop the snake shooting up the hook or going off in the other direction. The hook is then used to give the snake an anchor and guide the snake away from you. Obviously, because the snake is free to a point, it is also free to strike up at you. It is important a snake hook is long enough to allow you to move out of the way in case of strike, and B, some of the elapids get to a large size and control with a small hook is just not practical. Quite often, you will find that even the most aggressive snake, if handled in a slow and methodic way, will also act in a much calmer way than if pinned or handled using tongs. As you can see here, this Cape Cobra is not too bothered in being handled this way. However, you can see the hook is placed so if the snake suddenly turns around, Damien can steer it away. He can also lift the tail straight up, which will remove most of the snake's energy. However, you can never be complacent. Snakes are very good at climbing at a rate of knots. You have to have your wits about you all of the time. Never take your eyes off the snake you're controlling. Always expect the unexpected. Remember, different snakes work and move in different ways. Never attempt this without first spending time with keepers who are practiced in this. The final method we will look at is tubing. This system allows for a close examination of the venomous snake without any threat to either the keeper or a veterinary surgeon. Although there is some risk in trying to get the snake to go up into the tube in the first place. This method can be frustrating, as people who have ever tried to get a snake to go in a certain direction can testify. The basic theory is that you select from various sized tubes the correct one for the size of the snake. It has to be large enough for free access, but small enough for the snake not to be able to turn round. Once selected, you can either tire the snake out from placing the snake in a bin, then allowing it to constantly come up the bin. Then, by holding the tube above the snake's head, the snake can be encouraged to enter the tube. The other method is to tail and hook your snake. Gently restrain the snake about 8 inches behind the head. Then, as previously said, encourage the snake to enter the tube. When the snake is about 12 to 24 inches up inside the tube, you can then hold the snake and the tube with one hand. This handling method is very much a two-person technique, and whilst different people vary in how they get the snake into the tube, the basic essentials are the same. It is important that you spend time with an experienced keeper before trying this yourself. It is also essential that your partner and you work in harmony, and you know how each of you works. If this is not the case, very serious situations can occur. This method can easily be used to medicate a venomous snake, and by pre-drilling holes in the tubes, injections can be given. As you can see here, the Cape Cobra is being gently held by the hook, as the tube then is brought in. The reaction to the tube is individual and ranges from no problem to thrashing and head bobbing, anything to avoid going into the tube. We have also filmed it from the snake's point of view. This also shows how a snake can be allowed to breathe freely up the tube to a point where the medication can be given, using pre-drilled holes. As you can see here, from the snake's perspective, it is relatively stress-free. The snake can be held in place or allowed to move to the correct point. This method is superb for closely inspecting your venomous snakes, and every venomous keeper should have a set of tubes. As with other venomous handling equipment, Midwest custom tubes are superb for this use. We have given you details at the end of this video where you can purchase and see the whole range of this equipment. Maintenance of your venomous snakes. Obviously, entering your snake's cage is the most likely place to be bitten. Many accidents do occur by taking shortcuts in maintenance procedures. For instance, changing the water bowl by hand rather than using tongs. As you are not going to be handling your venomous snakes in the same way as you might do with a pet python or boa, there is a tendency for venomous snakes to expect feeding whenever the door is opened. Thus, it is very important for a keeper to have his wits about him when he is opening the door. We have given you a sample procedure to aid you in looking after your venomous snakes. Some people will have differing methods, so adapt any procedures to suit your circumstance and setup, making sure it is safe. Show your procedures to other hot keepers who will normally point out any holes and danger points. Always make sure that you have backup people with you who are trained in handling venomous snakes and are aware of what to do in case of snake bite. It is important you make sure you know how many snakes are in the viv and where they are. Prepare holding container and handling equipment. Look inside the viv and assess where the snake is. Unlock the cage and take hold of the handling equipment, keeping your eyes on the venomous snake at all times. Open the doors, making sure your fingers are never exposed to the snake. Using your handling tool, lift out the snake and place the snake in a holding container and put the lid on again, making sure the fingers again are not exposed. A lockable lid is better for this purpose. You are now free to maintain your venomous snake vivarium. Use gloves for cleaning out the vivs, as venomous snakes do shed their fangs. The last thing you want is to be stuck with a discarded fang which has some residual venom left on it. Make sure the water bowl is placed next to the door so you can add water without reaching into the viv. Once all maintenance is done, open the holding tub and lift the snake back out into the viv, always making sure you are out of strike range. Now close the viv, making sure your fingers are again kept out of strike range and contact. Lock the viv up and place key in a safe place. Feeding your venomous snakes can also be hazardous if the correct procedures are not used. Here we see a rhino viper being fed. Note the long hemostacks being used to keep fingers well out of the way. As you can see, the strike of this snake and most venomous snakes is extremely fast. In actual fact, the complete strike takes only a 20th of a second. We have then slowed it down by 50 times. Never ever be tempted to hand feed your venomous snakes. Always use tongs, which allow you to be out of the strike range. As you can see, it wouldn't take much of a mistake to get the keeper bitten. There is another danger with feeding venomous snakes. Due to the fact that venomous snakes are not handled in the same way as non-venomous snakes, they can become accustomed to the action of door opening being associated to being fed. It is crucial that the handler be aware of sudden movements and the snakes moving rapidly towards the door. In the case of elapids, this can be extremely quick. It is also important that you take into account the species you are feeding. A viper's metabolism is much slower than, say, a green mamba. So where you might feed a gaboon viper every 2 weeks, a green mamba's metabolism would require you to feed it every 5 or 6 days. Some snakes will feed off the tongs, and some will prefer you to leave the food so they can feed when you are not watching. I have found this with gaboon vipers. We have tried to help you by taking a quick look at 3 individual species. The first one is the Egyptian cobra, Naja Haji. This cobra is highly spirited to say the least and should not be kept by inexperienced keepers. This snake grows between 6 and 8 feet. It is mainly neurotoxic, but be aware as it has some hemotoxic properties in its venom. As these snakes are quite messy, a simple viv with newspaper as a substrate is best. The best handling technique for this species is a hook and tail method, or using a trap box. Although all species are individuals, this species as a whole are on the nervous side and will not fail to attack if cornered. The second one is the western diamondback rattlesnake, Crotalus atrox. This snake has an unpredictable temperament. You may also get big varieties in behaviour between specimens. This snake grows between 6 and 7 feet. This species has mainly hemotoxic properties in its venom. You can use newspaper or bark chips as a substrate, or if a natural vivarium is desired, then a sandy rocky landscape could be used. This snake should be handled using a hook. Normally they will sit happily on one without any problems. If an aggressive Crotalus is being handled, then use 2 hooks to control the snake. Never be tempted to tail a rattlesnake, as they can strike upwards remarkably fast. The third one is the gaboon viper, Bitus gabonica. This viper generally has a calm temperament, but can easily get stressed. This snake can grow up to 6 feet and is very heavily bodied. The venom with this snake is hemotoxic and cytotoxic. Be very aware that this snake's venom can cause a high amount of tissue damage even with antivenom. Bark chippings make a good substrate for this species, as these snakes like some humidity. Handling for this snake is best done on a hook, and they will normally quite happily sit on one, but be aware of lightning fast strikes. This snake is easy to get complacent with, but be aware as it can move very fast when it wants to. In making this video, we have tried to give you a surface level knowledge of keeping venomous snakes and how to maintain them. We have only skimmed the surface, and anyone who wishes to do this should research and buy all the books he can before getting a venomous snake. This subject can be gone into in some depth, and we would always recommend you sorting out your DWA license with your council before getting any venomous snake. It is of some discussion whether you are permitted to purchase a venomous snake whilst applying for your license, but we do not think it is responsible to go down this route. Research the species you want to keep. Spend as much time as you can with other hot keepers and ask as many questions as you think you need. Try and get yourself a mentor who has been doing it a long time. This hobby has its risks, but they can be minimised with the correct setup and procedures. Always think ahead and question yourself with what if. This should allow you to plan and prepare for any eventuality. Don't attempt to keep venomous snakes if you have not had a good few years' experience with aggressive non-venomous snakes first. Select your first hot snake after taking advice. Do not go for the Formula 1 of the hot snake world. Start with a species which is well within your capabilities. In your daily maintenance, never be tempted to take shortcuts. The risks just aren't worth it. There are a number of people we need to say a big thank you to in the making of this video. First of all, Paul Rowley, the UK's top venomous snake handler, who works at Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and whose constant tips and advice have been a tremendous help. Also to Tony Phelps, who certainly wrote the book on hot snake keeping. His book on poisonous snakes has helped every hot keeper for the last 20 years. He has a new book out next year on vipers, which will surely be a must for all hot keepers. Damien Dodd, who allowed us to film him handling the snakes in this video and putting himself up for public scrutiny. His patience with the filmmaker on redoing takes has been countless. Simon Keys, whose friendship and permission to film his collection of hot snakes was a great help. Nessie Blake, whose encouragement and constant patience made it possible for this video to be made. Matt Harris, who trailed around the country filming venomous snakes and driving countless miles. And to all those people who encouraged me to make this video, we hope you enjoy. We have included here the name and address of 3 reptile shops whose excellent facilities will serve you in all your venomous herping needs. For further information and products, contact www.venomweb.com.